Hello everybody and welcome to a scenario in which France forms an empire. Yep, that's literally the entire premise of the video. Okay, so France is a very pro-American country, and by pro-American I mean like they're very Western, they aren't towards the East. But in this scenario, first of all, I'd like to discuss France will be powered up. In our timeline, it probably couldn't take on a coalition against it from Germany, the UK, and Italy, but we're going to buff it up so it at least stands a chance in a war like that. Also, this is all fictional, don't take any of this seriously. I have nothing against any of the countries involved in this video. Now, our second point is that NATO, CSTO, the Rio Pact, all of those defensive military alliances, they're just going to not exist anymore. Also, some geographical features I may miss, and with that we can get onto the video. So, at some point in 2023, France elects a monarchist government, or there's some sort of coup against the current French government that results in a monarchist government. So, and this monarch has ambitions of restoring some of the former French territories from the Napoleon era. Now, the first thing that happens is a French invasion of Belgium. Now, the French are very strong, so they'd probably easily be able to capitulate Belgium and capture Brussels and Luxembourg. This is, obviously some governments are angry about this, but it's every country for themselves right now. No defensive pacts, European Union, stuff like it's every country for itself, basically. Next, we have the Netherlands declaring war on France for obvious reasons. I mean, them and the Dutch and Belgium have very close relations, like extensive people-to-people links and aligned security interests. Now, initially, the liberation of Belgium by the Dutch is very successful, as the French didn't see it coming. But as soon as the French managed to refocus their troops into this area, that Belgium is very quickly pushed back to its own border. We also see French troops leaking in here. This map doesn't show the lake, but I think it's somewhere like this. That's terribly drawn, but it's something like that. It's more like this. Now, with this, French forces are easily beginning to take over the country, as it's just a stronger country, and eventually the French reach Amsterdam, resulting in the capitulation of the Netherlands. Now, in this peace deal, we do have some ugly looking borders, but the French basically take over part of the Netherlands and all of Belgium and Luxembourg, and this area of the Netherlands is turned into a puppet of some kind. It's at this point we see these three countries make an anti-expansion pact against France. Now, this is because they lost the Netherlands, which was another Germanic country. They haven't started an invasion, but they warn France that if France just invades one more other country, then they will be forced to invade. France doesn't heed this warning and decides that its next major move would be taking Sardinia over. At this point, they just want to expand, really. So Italy moves a ton of its forces to Sardinia, and this kind of immobilizes the French thingy, because although they do have a stronger military, they weren't expecting so much resistance, and they're forced to not retreat, but they're forced to stay where they are for the time being. Now, recently the French Empire has been increasing their naval superiority in this area, so they now are really dominant in these areas. They do have some kind of forces over here, but they're completely dominant, uncontested in these areas. They use their navy and focus some of their forces over here into a spearhead, eventually hoping to land on the bottom of Sardinia. Eventually this happens and they take over naval superiority on the west side of Sardinia, allowing them to invade. With this, they easily take over the island. It's at this point where this faction, these three guys, remember them? These guys are against the expansion of the French kind of empire at this point. So they begin, and they have warned the French in the past, so they do begin an invasion. Since the French don't have too many fortifications in the former Dutch and Belgian lands, they do have an easier time walking through there than marching through there than anywhere else. It's also at this point where the French puppet state of of the Netherlands does join the war on the French side, obviously with force from the French government. It's also at this point where French naval troops cut off this section of the Italian navy from anywhere else, and managed to successfully capture this territory. French forces gain a sliver of coast on the Italian peninsula. Now it's at this point where they've reached down to where the border of Belgium would have been, and cut off Calais from the rest of France. Now this really draws some attention, and some of the French forces are forced back up here, and where they easily begin to fight back. First of all, they re-secure Calais before beginning their real pushback. Not only are the French forces buffed, but they probably, since they elected an imperialist ruler, they've probably built up their forces quite a bit, maybe even used some conscription. And they're a lot stronger. With this, they eliminate the coalition's forces to the north and begin their own push into Germany. I may have forgotten to mention this, but the reason the Dutch are a puppet instead of being a formal part of the French Empire is that the French are working on integration slowly for the Dutch, so they have to kind of break down the Dutch identity to merge them more with the French. This is also why the Dutch are being mainly taught French as one of their main languages instead of, Dutch. The French have quite easily pushed into Germany, as well as building up their area of land in the Italian kind of, zone. After consolidating their forces on the Italian peninsula, they push in a spearhead towards the Austrian border. Now, after the German military begins to call in its contract soldiers, after all, it does only have a career soldier count of about 56,000, 57,000. It has about 116 to 117,000 contract soldiers, which it calls in to aid it in the war. This kind of shock and this element of surprise almost allows Germany to get some fierce pushback. It's at this point French forces quickly reach the border of Austria on both sides and begin their massive push into the nation. After the French fiercely push back after being forced to retreat quite a bit earlier, the German forces are sent really far back, and some important points have been taken. Also at this point, really, really organised French forces easily begin to push down the Italian peninsula, and also their navy is starting to push towards Sicily. Eventually their navy reaches Sicily and begins to push through it. As well as this, the French finally managed to take over all of Austria and Sicily. Eventually, Czechia sees what's coming to it and decides its best move is exiting the war at this point, leaving only Italy and Germany, which both decide along with France that it's best to make a peace deal. So these are the areas in which France is navally dominant. All of this down here, quite a lot. They've also finally gained naval superiority over the Channel, so we may, in a part 2, see them invade Britain. But for now, they're satisfied. For now.